Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 28 of Hearing Him First. Seems like it's been a long time since I did one of these. I had Memorial Day weekend. It's actually the Tuesday after Memorial Day when I'm recording this. So if you're watching it sometime after that, I hope you had a great Memorial Day. But I didn't record one yesterday, and so it feels good to be getting back into it. Actually going to move on from the Power Prayers and What's True About You series that we did. If you missed any of those, you can go to our YouTube channel, Hearing Him First. Just search for Hearing Him First. We come right up. And there are a couple of playlists there that are really great if you want to dive into Power Prayers from the Psalms or Power Prayers from the Apostle Paul. Or before that, we did a series on What's True About You. Today, I'm moving back to just regular Bible reading, and one of the things that I do to hear Him first, which is really the whole focus of these videos, is to hear God's verse first and to hear it the loudest and the clearest. And so every morning I wake up, I read a couple of chapters of Scripture and have a journal that kind of goes along with that. I've mentioned this before. It's called the Banding Together Journal. We have some that are branded for my church, Linwood Wesleyan Church here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. But you can get these online if you're interested in that. Send an email to hearinghimfirst@gmail.com and I'll send you the link and you can pick one of those up. And it's got a reading plan that moves through the New Testament every year and through the Old Testament every 3 or 4 years. So it's a great way to make sure you're reading the whole Bible, the whole New Testament every year and the whole Old Testament every 3 or 4 years. So it works through Psalms and Proverbs as well as going through the New Testament. Well, I want to work back through some of the ones that I didn't talk about that I would have if I wasn't doing those Power Prayers and What's True About You series. So the light just changed. Isn't that cool? We'll fix that for next time. But here's what Paul says in Romans 8:26-28, and I'm sure you've heard Romans 8:28 if you've been following Christ for any amount of time. But hearing the verses that come before it maybe helps put a little context in that as well. So here's what Paul says in Romans 8:26-28. He says, "In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with the will of God. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose." So there's a number of prayers kind of stitched together here, a number of promises, I should say, that are stitched together here, concluding with Romans 8:28, which is often one of the more famous passages from the book of Romans, that God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. It's a very beloved promise of Scripture, verse of Scripture, but seeing it in the context of verse 26 and 27 helps me to see the power of perspective, as the Spirit intercedes for us when we don't even know how to pray. And as we think about coming out of a little mini-series on Power Prayers, maybe there are times where you're like, I don't know how to pray, and Power Prayer can be helpful. Other times I think we just need to get quiet, we need to get still, and allow the Spirit to intercede for us. And we're told here that the Spirit intercedes in accordance with the will of God. And so the Spirit will actually pray through us, helping us to understand what God's will would be. And oftentimes for me, this happens with a piece of paper and a pen, and I kind of get through or exhaust my own subconscious thoughts and conscious thoughts, and then something that is not my thought will come to mind, and I'll realize that's God speaking through me, speaking to me, and praying for me. And we see that the Spirit, which is alive in us, prays through us according to the will of God. And that gives us a godly perspective to our circumstance. So when we're in a quandary and we don't know how to pray, we find that the Spirit will pray in us, will pray through us, and that will give us not only a godly perspective on our circumstances, but maybe a godly acceptance of those circumstances as well. And that can cause those circumstances to turn and to work for our good and empower us to rejoice always and to pray continually and to give thanks in every circumstance, which is another powerful little passage of scripture from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. So my hope and my prayer for you today is that you will lean into this and say, God, what are you saying to me? How do you want me to respond to this? And how can I hear you first through your Spirit, which is alive within me and speaks through me and to me in my times of difficulty and the difficult circumstances that I face. As always, if you are liking this, go ahead and click like, click share, comment, maybe tag somebody's name that you think would be blessed by this. Go to YouTube, search Hearing Him First, subscribe, and find all the other videos there as well in case you've missed any of them. But God bless you. My hope and prayer is that you'll hear Him first today whenever you watch this. Take care.